So there I was, 6 a.m. Tuesday, stumbling out for coffee. What the hell? My grandfather's century-old cypress trees? Gone. A frickin' four-lane highway's tearing through my federally protected wetlands like a Walmart parking lot. The screech of chainsaws biting ancient wood makes my teeth ache, while diesel fumes and swamp gas choke the morning air. And there's Cordelia Blackstone, our HOA's Karen-in-Chief, standing ankle-deep in sacred swamp mud, grinning with her clipboard like she just won the lottery. Designer boots, perfect makeup, zero shame. "Emergency highway access for community safety," she yells over the bulldozer roar. "Lady, you just built a four-lane death trap in a flood zone during hurricane season. My grandfather fought Nazis to protect this land, and you think some HOA paperwork trumps federal wetland law? Big mistake. Mother Nature's got plans for you. What would you do if your HOA destroyed your family's legacy? Drop your location and worst HOA nightmare in the comments. Let me back up and tell you how we got to this beautiful disaster. My name's Dex Morrison, and I'm what you'd call an environmental engineer. Basically, I spend my days making sure oil companies don't accidentally turn the Gulf of Mexico into chocolate milk. Recently divorced, recently fed up with Houston traffic, and recently inheriting the one piece of Texas that hasn't been paved over yet. 3 years ago, my grandfather Ezra passed away and left me his little slice of paradise. 3 acres of pristine wetlands that smell like cypress bark and honeysuckle instead of exhaust fumes. We're talking century-old trees with trunks thick as pickup trucks, a hand-built fishing dock from the 1940s, and a cabin that survived more hurricanes than most marriages. Now, Grandpa Ezra wasn't just some old swamp hermit. This man earned a Purple Heart storming Normandy, came home, and worked with the Army Corps of Engineers on flood control. Smart as Einstein, and twice as stubborn. After studying local flood patterns for decades, he did something genius in 1987. Slapped a federal conservation easement on the entire property. Picture this crusty old veteran, sitting in his cabin with a cup of black coffee, writing in his diary. Developers will come for this land. They'll claim progress, safety, community good. They'll be lying through their perfectly veneered teeth. The conservation easement was his legal middle finger to future greed. Federal protection, permanent as a tattoo, ironclad as his Purple Heart. No takebacks, no exceptions, no local emergencies can override it. Once land gets federal conservation status, it stays protected forever. Local governments, HOAs, even declared emergencies can't touch it. The feds don't mess around with environmental law. Fast forward to 2019, and bingo, here come the developers like locusts in hard hats. Willowbrook Estates sprouted around my property faster than mushrooms after rain. 200 luxury homes starting at $800K, built on what used to be natural floodplains. Suddenly my rustic cabin looked like a hillbilly compound, surrounded by houses that belong in a country club brochure. The morning air went from smelling like wild sage to smelling like fresh paint and chemical fertilizer. Construction trucks replaced birdsong as my daily alarm clock. Enter stage left, Cordelia Blackstone, 52, former corporate environmental lawyer from drought-stricken California. Yes, you heard that right. An environmental lawyer who apparently suffered selective amnesia the moment she crossed the state line. Her husband Sterling owns Blackstone Construction and Development, and together they're like a perfectly oiled bulldozer designed to turn nature into profit. Cordelia got herself elected HOA president in 2022 on a platform of modernizing community infrastructure. Translation: making everything look like a suburban shopping mall, whether you want it to or not. She's got this delightful habit of dismissing hurricane concerns as southern flood hysteria and calling environmental protection extremist nonsense. Real smart attitude when you're living in a state where Mother Nature regularly throws Category 5 tantrums. Here's the million-dollar plot. Sterling's planning Phase 2 development. 400 additional luxury homes, $400 million project over 5 years. But there's one tiny problem. The only viable route to connect with the new interstate bypass runs straight through my federally protected wetlands. Without that highway, his suburban empire stays as landlocked as a bass in a birdbath. So Cordelia launched what I call the Death by 1,000 Paper Cuts campaign, citation for letting wildflowers grow instead of suburban grass, violation for Grandpa's unsafe fishing dock, $750 fine for fixing storm damage without HOA pre-approval. Each month brought new creative interpretations of community standards. By month 5, she was filing emergency access concerns, building a paper trail thicker than Texas humidity. Here's the kicker. It's July 2024, peak hurricane season, and NOAA just predicted hyperactive storm activity. Cypress Creek running through my property is already stressed from upstream development, and climate change is brewing stronger, meaner storms. But Cordelia thinks hurricane warnings are just local folklore. She's about to get a very expensive education in Texas weather patterns. Here's where things went from annoying to absolutely insane. One Tuesday morning in early July, I wake up to find official-looking papers taped to my cabin door. Emergency construction permit, approved by the county, signed by some bureaucrat I've never heard of, authorizing immediate highway construction through my property for imminent public safety risk. I'm standing there in my boxers, coffee mug in hand, reading this legal fiction, when the ground starts vibrating under my bare feet. Not an earthquake. Something worse. The rumble of diesel engines echoes through the morning mist like mechanical thunder. A convoy of bulldozers, dump trucks, and earth movers rolls down what used to be my peaceful dirt road. The acrid smell of diesel exhaust cuts through the sweet honeysuckle air, making my eyes water. These aren't local contractors either. Sterling brought in specialized wetland destruction equipment from Louisiana, the kind of machinery you use when you're planning to obliterate an ecosystem before anyone can stop you. Cordelia's standing there with her clipboard, wearing a hard hat over her perfectly styled hair, grinning like she just won the lottery. Emergency highway access for community flood safety, she announces to the gathering crowd of construction workers. I remember what my grandfather used to say about emergencies. Real emergencies don't come with press releases and perfectly coordinated equipment. Smart man, that Ezra. So I do what any reasonable environmental engineer would do. I call the Federal Cavalry. Fish and Wildlife Service has an emergency violations hotline. And let me tell you, mentioning conservation easement destruction gets their attention faster than shouting fire in a crowded theater. The woman on the phone goes from bored bureaucrat to federal prosecutor mode in about 3 seconds. While I'm on hold with the feds, I fire up my drone and start documenting everything. Professional-grade equipment, high-definition video, GPS coordinates. Finally, my engineering background comes in handy for something other than oil spill reports. The footage shows century-old cypress trees getting ripped out like dandelions while Cordelia poses for what looks like a victory photo. Here's where things get really interesting. During my research into Sterling's company background, something I learned from years of vetting environmental contractors, I discover this guy's insurance got canceled 6 months ago. Turns out he's got quite the reputation, building in flood zones, then filing hurricane damage claims when Mother Nature comes collecting. Multiple violations across Louisiana and Arkansas, $2.3 million in EPA fines, and a creative pattern of using shell companies to hide his track record. The current highway project, completely uninsured for environmental liability. If something goes wrong, say a hurricane washing away his illegal construction, Sterling's personally on the hook for every penny. I learned during my oil industry days that contractors without insurance are contractors planning to disappear when things go sideways. I post the drone footage on social media with #save Ezra's Wetlands, and within hours, environmental groups across Texas are sharing it. The video clearly shows the destruction happening in real time, with Sterling's crew working like they're racing against something. But here's what really makes my blood boil. I run the engineering numbers on their flood safety claim. Complete bullshit. Their highway doesn't reduce flooding. It creates a perfect funnel that would channel floodwater straight into the neighborhood at triple velocity. It's like designing a water slide for storm surge, except the riders are someone's house and car. The metallic screech of chainsaws biting through ancient wood becomes the new soundtrack to my mornings, mixed with the beeping of backing trucks and shouted instructions in languages I don't recognize. Over the next few days, 3 neighbors quietly approach me. Margaret River, our neighborhood CPA, has been losing sleep over some suspicious financial transactions in the HOA books. Beaumont Williams, a retired teacher whose grandfather survived the 1987 flood, remembers stories about these wetlands saving the town. Travis Cole, a young father, keeps asking why they're removing the natural protection that keeps his kids safe. Margaret shows me her preliminary audit. $127,000 in emergency assessments paid directly to Sterling's company over 8 months. Money supposedly for hurricane preparedness that somehow funded highway permits and equipment deposits. From my experience investigating corporate environmental violations, this pattern screams fraud. Turns out Cordelia's been running this same playbook on other properties. The elderly widow who sold over septic violations, the veteran harassed about RV parking, all properties blocking Sterling's development plans. The local news picks up the story. HOA destroys federal wetlands for highway construction. Suddenly, Cordelia's not just dealing with one angry neighbor. She's got reporters asking uncomfortable questions about permits, insurance, and federal law violations. By week's end, 30% of Grandpa's wetlands are gone, ancient bark crunching under bulldozer treads while I document every federal crime in high definition. The federal government is officially pissed off. The neighborhood is asking questions. And Sterling's uninsured construction project is about to meet hurricane season. Cordelia thinks she's winning. She has no idea what's coming for her. 2 weeks into this nightmare, and Cordelia pulls her next move like a chess master, except she's playing checkers against a grandmaster who's been dead for 30 years. The federal inspector finally arrives, Dr. Patricia Valdez, a woman who looks like she's personally arrested more environmental criminals than El Paso has tumbleweeds. But Cordelia's ready. She intercepts Dr. Valdez at my property line with a performance worthy of Broadway. Temporary mitigation plan, Cordelia announces, flourishing a thick folder like it's the Constitution itself. Our highway includes enhanced flood management infrastructure that will actually improve community drainage by 300%. I'm watching this from my cabin porch, sipping coffee that tastes like betrayal, when I notice something interesting about those official documents. The letterhead belongs to Sterling's brother-in-law's consulting firm in Dallas. These people aren't just corrupt, they're keeping it in the family. The smell of wet concrete mixes with July humidity as Sterling's crews shift into overdrive. 18-hour days, floodlights turning night into day, concrete mixers running like mechanical heartbeats. They're racing against something, and that something becomes crystal clear when Tropical Storm Alberto spins up in the Gulf like nature's early warning system. My phone explodes with notifications. Environmental law students from UT offering research help after my live stream caught their professor's attention. Smart kids. They start digging through public records while I document the daily destruction in real time. Here's where Margaret River becomes my secret weapon. While Cordelia's busy managing federal inspectors, Margaret's quietly conducting forensic accounting that would make the IRS weep with joy. She finds $200,000 in payments to Sterling's company, every penny approved by Cordelia without a single homeowner vote. But I stumble onto the real smoking gun while analyzing their traffic engineering claims. Remember Cordelia's emergency evacuation route? I run those GPS coordinates through mapping software and discover something that makes me laugh so hard I nearly choke on my coffee. Their highway dead ends at Sterling's empty development lots. No connection to county roads, no emergency access, no evacuation benefit. It's literally a $200,000 driveway to houses that exist only on Sterling's blueprint dreams. I create a simple overlay video showing the geographic impossibility and post it with the caption, "Emergency evacuation route that evacuates you directly into Sterling's backyard." Within 6 hours, it's got 100,000 views and comments ranging from, "How stupid do they think we are?" to, "Someone arrest these morons before they hurt someone." The sound of Alberto's outer rain bands drumming on my cabin roof provides percussion for the concrete mixer's mechanical symphony. Dr. Valdez spends 3 days documenting violations, collecting water samples, and looking like someone watching a nature documentary about extinction. Then the federal cavalry arrives in force. EPA criminal investigation team rolls up in black SUVs that scream, "Your life is about to get very complicated." Fish and wildlife issues cease and desist orders backed by actual U.S. Marshals. DOJ opens RICO conspiracy investigation. Sterling's response? Double down and dig faster. His crews bring in spotlights and start working around the clock like they're building Noah's Ark during the first raindrops. I recognize this strategy from my oil industry days. When federal investigators arrive, environmental criminals often accelerate destruction, hoping to create situations where restoration becomes impossible. Margaret's neighborhood meeting turns into a full-scale revolution. 78% of homeowners sign recall petitions. Beaumont Williams presents historical data proving these wetlands prevented flooding for over a century. Travis Cole documents how construction noise is giving kids nightmares and elderly neighbors stress-induced health problems. The insurance apocalypse begins hitting individual families. Flood insurance companies receive federal notifications about unauthorized flood zone modifications and start mass policy cancellations. Home values drop 25% in 2 weeks as buyers realize they're looking at properties in a federal crime scene. Channel 13 runs a beautiful segment called Highway to Nowhere, where their reporter stands exactly where Cordelia claims emergency connections will be built, showing nothing but Sterling's chain-link fence and empty lots. The reporter deadpans. If this is an evacuation route, it evacuates you directly into someone's future swimming pool. CNN picks up the story nationwide. Texas HOA destroys protected wetlands for developer's private highway. Environmental groups coordinate protests. #Savizras Wetlands hits 2.3 million social media mentions, with people sharing their own HOA horror stories. Dr. Valdez delivers her verdict with the enthusiasm of a coroner. Systematic destruction of federally protected ecosystem for private commercial benefit. This represents one of the most blatant environmental crimes I've documented in 20 years of federal service. By August 1st, 60% of Grandpa's wetlands are concrete and regret, but Sterling's Highway has become a federal case study. The foundation sits like a concrete scar through paradise while hurricane season officially begins. Cordelia's still grinning because her road's getting built. She doesn't realize that Mother Nature's been taking notes, and tuition in her weather school costs everything you own. August rolls in like a furnace blast, and Cordelia decides it's time to play nuclear warfare with paperwork. She files a restraining order claiming I'm threatening construction workers and interfering with emergency evacuation infrastructure. The local judge, Sterling's Thursday golf buddy, grants it faster than a NASCAR pit stop. Suddenly I'm legally banned from documenting federal crimes happening on my own damn property. The irony burns hotter than the August sun reflecting off fresh concrete. Here I am, an environmental engineer, legally prohibited from engineering anything environmental, while watching my grandfather's legacy get paved into oblivion. Sterling's crews shift into apocalypse mode. Specialized equipment from Louisiana, Arkansas, and Mississippi, the kind of machinery you rent when you're planning to move the Rocky Mountains before lunch. The hydraulic hammers sound like mechanical woodpeckers on steroids. Backup beepers creating a symphony of destruction that never ends because the work never stops. Hurricane Beryl spins up in the Gulf like nature's early warning system, and suddenly weather reports become must-see TV. Gulf water temperatures hit record highs, perfect fuel for the kind of storms that rewrite history books and insurance policies. Rebecca Santos calls me from Austin after seeing CNN coverage. I'll take this pro bono because watching environmental crimes this obvious makes my law degree weep. Smart woman. She immediately files federal motions arguing that conservation easements trump local judicial comedy shows. Then Margaret River drops her forensic accounting nuclear bomb. Those offshore accounts Sterling's been hiding? He didn't just move construction money, he moved his entire financial existence. Cayman Islands shell companies, Swiss bank transfers, the complete international money laundering greatest hits album. But I stumble onto something even more beautiful while researching his financing structure. Sterling's borrowed $47 million against projected profits from luxury homes accessed by a highway that terminates in a federal wildlife refuge. He's essentially financed a casino by betting the house money on a roulette wheel that doesn't exist. Here's where the mini-twist gets delicious. While digging through public records, I discover Sterling's wife filed for divorce 6 months ago. She's been quietly transferring marital assets to protect herself from her husband's environmental crime spree. Cordelia doesn't know it yet, but she's fighting for a development project owned by a man whose own wife is planning to throw him under the federal bus. The diesel exhaust mixing with August humidity creates our neighborhood's new signature scent. Ode environmental destruction with hints of legal liability. My morning coffee now comes with construction noise that starts at 4:30 a.m. because Sterling's crews are literally racing against hurricane season. FBI raids Sterling's offices like a federal Christmas morning, seizing 5 years of financial records. EPA criminal investigators work alongside U.S. Marshals while news helicopters circle overhead. Federal grand jury begins hearing evidence for what prosecutors call environmental terrorism with international money laundering. The highway hits 85% completion despite cease and desist orders. 4 lanes of concrete gilt now bisect Grandpa's Cypress Cathedral, creating what my engineering calculations show is a perfect storm surge superhighway aimed directly at Sterling's luxury lots. Insurance Armageddon begins. Flood policies canceled. Homeowner premiums increase 600%. Property values collapse faster than Sterling's marriage. Real estate agents stop returning calls from our zip code. Margaret's Wetlands revolt packs 250 angry homeowners into the community center. Cordelia arrives with a crisis management team that costs more per hour than most people's monthly mortgage payments. Beaumont Williams drops his historical bombshell. Sterling's father-in-law was the county commissioner who buried 1987 flood studies proving these wetlands prevent catastrophic flooding. This isn't just corruption, it's generational environmental crime, with each generation getting greedier and stupider. Hurricane Beryl strengthens unexpectedly, developing the kind of rapid intensification that climate scientists have been warning about. Weather models show storms forming faster, strengthening quicker, carrying more destructive power than anything in recorded history. Federal charges drop like hammer blows. Wire fraud, conspiracy, environmental terrorism, RICO violations, international money laundering, 20 years to life. Asset forfeiture on everything Sterling owns, including the concrete monument to his stupidity currently destroying my wetlands. Dr. Valdez delivers her environmental death sentence. Complete ecosystem annihilation for private profit. Restoration costs $89,000 per destroyed acre plus punitive damages. Total liability exceeds Sterling's ability to pay in several lifetimes. The highway stands 90% complete by month's end, a concrete testament to human greed carved through the heart of natural wisdom. Sterling launches home sales with brochures featuring exclusive highway access and modern flood management. What those brochures don't mention is that his highway creates a storm surge funnel, aimed directly at his million-dollar lots like nature's own targeting system. Hurricane Helena forms in the Atlantic while Cordelia poses for newspaper photos celebrating community progress. She's smiling for cameras while a Category 5 education in meteorology heads straight for her concrete masterpiece. Sometimes Mother Nature's sense of humor involves billion-dollar punchlines delivered at 190 miles per hour. September arrives with Hurricane Helena spinning up in the Atlantic like God's own blender, and that's when Margaret River walks into my cabin, carrying documents that will change everything. The smell of old coffee and impending doom fills the air as Margaret spreads financial records across my kitchen table like she's performing an autopsy on the American dream. Her forensic accounting has uncovered a house of cards so elaborate it makes Bernie Madoff look like an amateur. "Dex, this is worse than we thought," Margaret says, her accountant's voice trembling with the weight of numbers that don't lie. "Sterling didn't just borrow against future profits. He created a financial pyramid scheme using your wetlands as collateral." The revelation hits like cold water. Sterling owes $47 million to international lenders who secured their loans against luxury home sales. But those sales depend entirely on highway access. No highway, no buyers, no sales, no payments. Remove one domino, say a federal environmental crime conviction, and the entire empire collapses into bankruptcy court. Here's the beautiful irony. Sterling's environmental liability insurance was canceled 18 months ago after multiple wetland destruction claims in Louisiana and Arkansas. His current project carries zero coverage for environmental crimes. When federal prosecutors win, not if, when, Sterling's personally liable for every penny of restoration costs. Hurricane Helena strengthens to Category 2, while Rebecca Santos calls with intelligence that tastes like justice. DOJ prosecutors aren't just building environmental cases, they're using RICO statutes to treat the entire HOA conspiracy as organized crime. Under federal asset forfeiture laws, they can seize everything Sterling owns, down to his lucky golf clubs. But Margaret's deeper investigation reveals something that makes my hands shake. She found Grandfather Ezra's original engineering calculations buried in my cabin's back room, wrapped in oilcloth like buried treasure. Mathematical proof that these specific wetlands can absorb the storm surge from a Category 5 hurricane. My grandfather wasn't just some old veteran protecting pretty trees. He was a military engineer who studied every major hurricane that hit Texas from 1900 to 1987. The conservation easement wasn't environmental sentiment, it was disaster engineering. Ezra calculated exactly how much water these cypress groves could absorb, then protected that capacity with federal law. The papers are covered with his neat handwriting. When the big one comes, not if, when this land will save lives. Protect it like you'd protect ammunition in wartime. Rebecca Santos shares federal prosecution timelines that read like a hurricane countdown. Environmental terrorism trials scheduled for October, right after hurricane season. Asset seizure orders already signed, preventing Sterling from moving money offshore. Enhanced sentences for crimes against disaster preparedness during active hurricane season. Hurricane Helena churns toward Category 3, and storm surge models show 18 feet of water, exactly what grandfather's calculations predicted. Sterling's highway creates a perfect funnel to channel that surge straight toward his own luxury development at triple velocity. The insurance apocalypse is complete. Every policy in the modified flood zone canceled permanently. Property values don't just drop, they cease to exist. You can't sell what you can't insure, and nobody insures property where natural disaster protection was criminally destroyed. Here's the ultimate revelation. Sterling's international debt comes due regardless of hurricanes, federal investigations, or acts of God. His lenders don't care about environmental crimes. They want their $47 million, and they'll seize everything he owns to get it. Cordelia's crisis management team flees like rats abandoning a sinking ship as Helena approaches Category 4. Even professional liars have standards, and representing environmental terrorists during a hurricane apparently crosses that line. The perfect storm converges: financial collapse, federal prosecution, and Category 4 hurricane. Sterling destroyed the natural protection that would save his investment, built a storm surge superhighway aimed at his own property, and timed the whole catastrophe to coincide with the most dangerous hurricane season in recorded history. Hurricane Helena spins toward Texas, while grandfather's ghost prepares to teach a masterclass in consequences. Sometimes the best revenge is just letting physics and federal law do their jobs. Hurricane Helena hits Category 4 with 5 days to landfall, and suddenly everyone's moving like their lives depend on it, because they do. Rebecca Santos transforms my cabin into a legal war room, coordinating with federal prosecutors via satellite phone while emergency broadcasts play in the background. We've got 72 hours to finalize criminal charges before mandatory evacuation, she tells me, spreading federal documents across my grandfather's old dining table. After that, we document everything and let nature deliver the verdict. The smell of ozone hangs heavy in the September air as Helena's outer bands dump rain across the Gulf. Margaret River works with manic intensity, uploading financial evidence to federal servers before potential power outages. Every transaction, every forged permit, every illegal payment, all preserved in digital amber for prosecutors to dissect. Beaumont Williams arrives with a waterproof case containing every historical document about our area's flood patterns. Maps from the 1900 Galveston hurricane, engineering reports from Hurricane Carla in 1961, Grandfather Ezra's detailed calculations from the 1980s. Proof that these wetlands have been saving lives for over a century. Travis Cole coordinates with environmental groups nationwide, turning our local disaster into a federal case study. His social media campaign reaches 8.3 million followers as people share their own stories about HOA environmental crimes. The hashtag #HelenaVistaHighway trends alongside official hurricane coverage. My engineering training kicks into overdrive as I install waterproof cameras throughout the remaining wetland areas. Time-lapse photography will capture how natural flood absorption works compared to Sterling's concrete funnel system. If we survive this hurricane, we'll have definitive proof of environmental protection versus environmental destruction. Helena strengthens to Category 5 with sustained winds of 180 miles per hour. Storm surge projections reach 20 feet, higher than most houses, enough to turn cars into boats and boats into projectiles. Emergency management issues final evacuation orders for the entire coastal region. Federal agents work around the clock preparing criminal charges. EPA Environmental Crimes Unit, FBI Financial Crimes Division, and DOJ prosecutors coordinate the largest environmental RICO case in Texas history. They've got Sterling's financial records, Cordelia's forged permits, and enough evidence to fill a federal courthouse. Here's what I learned during my oil industry days about federal environmental law. When the government decides to prosecute environmental crimes, they don't mess around. Enhanced penalties during disaster seasons, asset forfeiture that strips criminals naked, and sentences that make white-collar criminals wish they'd robbed banks instead. Rebecca explains the legal strategy while Hurricane Helena's wind rattles my cabin windows. 3 separate federal charges: environmental terrorism, conspiracy to defraud, and RICO violations. Each carries 20-year maximums. Sterling's looking at 60 years in federal prison, and Cordelia gets enhanced sentences for abusing public trust. The documentation strategy requires military precision, professional-grade video equipment powered by generator backup, satellite communication for real-time uploads, and enough battery power to stream through a Category 5 hurricane. If Sterling's highway destroys my neighborhood, the world will watch it happen live. Margaret's financial analysis reveals the ultimate irony. Sterling's insurance company classified hurricane damage to illegally modified flood zones as intentional destruction by policyholder. No coverage, no claims, no protection. His $47 million debt becomes immediately due the moment salt water touches his concrete highway. Federal asset seizure orders prevent Sterling from evacuating his equipment. $15 million worth of bulldozers, concrete mixers, and specialized machinery sits directly in Helena's projected path because federal marshals won't let him move anything. His tools of environmental destruction become hurricane victims. Cordelia's crisis management firm officially terminates their contract via email marked force majeure. Professional spin doctors apparently draw the line at representing environmental criminals during Category 5 hurricanes. She's facing federal charges and nature's wrath without legal representation or public relations support. The media coordination reaches biblical proportions. CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, and international outlets position crews for environmental crime meets natural disaster coverage. Our local catastrophe becomes global entertainment as people watch karma delivered at 180 miles per hour wind speed. Personal preparation involves honoring Grandfather Ezra's detailed hurricane survival plans hidden in the cabin walls. Emergency supplies, communication equipment, and structural reinforcements designed by a man who understood that sometimes you have to weather the storm to win the war. Helena's eye wall tightens as landfall approaches in 48 hours. Weather models converge on our exact location with the accuracy of biblical prophecy. Sterling's highway stands ready to channel 20 feet of storm surge directly into his luxury development like nature's own precision-guided weapon. The federal team evacuates to emergency command centers 50 miles inland, maintaining surveillance on Cordelia and Sterling through satellite monitoring. Criminal charges will be filed the moment Helena passes, assuming we all survive nature's final examination. Sterling's concrete monument to greed gleams in the pre-hurricane sunlight, a 4-lane highway to nowhere that's about to become the world's most expensive artificial reef. Hurricane Helena approaches like the finger of God, ready to teach a master class in consequences. Sometimes the best preparation is just getting out of Mother Nature's way and letting physics handle the justice. Hurricane Helena, 48 hours to landfall, and Cordelia loses what's left of her mind. She files an emergency federal lawsuit claiming my hurricane documentation interferes with disaster response and endangers community safety. The woman is literally arguing that filming environmental crimes during a hurricane violates her constitutional rights. Even her own lawyers look embarrassed when they submit the paperwork. The irony tastes like salt spray already blowing inland from Helena's outer bands. Here's someone who destroyed natural hurricane protection, claiming that documenting her crimes somehow makes the hurricane more dangerous. Sterling tries one last desperate gambit, offering federal prosecutors a $10 million settlement to drop all charges. The FBI wiretap captures him on a call to the Cayman Islands, frantically trying to access offshore accounts that were frozen 6 months ago. "I'll pay anything," he pleads. "Just let me evacuate my equipment before the storm hits." The response from federal prosecutors sounds like justice with a Texas accent. "Mr. Sterling, your equipment can evacuate the same way your wetlands did, in pieces." Helena strengthens to Category 5 with the kind of rapid intensification that climate scientists have been warning about. Sustained winds reach 185 miles per hour, making this storm comparable to Hurricane Camille or the Labor Day hurricane of 1935. the kind of weather events that rewrite coastlines and history books simultaneously. My engineering calculations show Sterling's highway will channel storm surge at velocities exceeding 80 miles per hour. That's faster than most cars drive on that same highway during normal conditions. The concrete funnel he built to access his luxury homes will deliver 20 feet of angry ocean directly to his front door. Federal agents maintain surveillance from emergency command centers while coordinating the largest environmental crime prosecution in Texas history. EPA criminal investigators, FBI Financial Crimes Unit, and DOJ prosecutors work around the clock preparing charges that will be filed the moment Helena passes, assuming there's anything left to prosecute. The sound of Helena's approach becomes audible as a constant low rumble, like freight trains running underground. Emergency sirens test every hour now, their wailing mixing with the wind to create a soundtrack of impending apocalypse. Sterling's construction equipment sits abandoned throughout the neighborhood, frozen by federal asset seizure orders. $15 million worth of bulldozers, concrete mixers, and earth movers positioned perfectly to become projectiles when Helena arrives. The tools of environmental destruction about to be destroyed by the environment they attacked. Insurance companies deliver their final verdict through emergency notifications. Zero coverage for any hurricane damage in illegally modified flood zones. Sterling's concrete highway instantly transforms from asset to liability worth negative $47 million the moment storm surge touches it. Cordelia's crisis management team flees the state via private jet, abandoning their contract with a termination notice that basically says, "Good luck with that federal prosecution and Category 5 hurricane." Professional reputation managers apparently have standards about representing environmental terrorists during natural disasters. Margaret Rivers' final financial audit reveals the complete scope of Sterling's financial house of cards. International loans secured against property that will be underwater in 36 hours. Development partnerships that dissolve automatically upon federal criminal charges. Construction contracts that become void if equipment gets destroyed by acts of God. The media frenzy reaches international levels as news crews position for environmental crime meets biblical hurricane coverage. Helena becomes more than just a weather event. It's divine justice delivered at 185 miles per hour, with 12.7 million people worldwide watching the live stream. Helena's eye wall contracts to 25 miles across, creating the kind of concentrated destruction that meteorologists describe using phrases like catastrophic and unsurvivable. Storm surge projections increase to 22 feet as the storm approaches during astronomical high tide, worst possible timing for everything except cosmic justice. Federal prosecutors coordinate with disaster response teams to ensure criminal charges proceed regardless of hurricane damage. Environmental crimes don't get hurricane delays, and federal asset seizure continues even when those assets are underwater. My cabin creaks and groans as Helena's outer winds reach 70 miles per hour, still 30 hours from landfall. Grandfather Ezra's military engineering holds solid, while Sterling's luxury development starts showing stress fractures from wind loads they were never designed to handle. The live stream audience grows to 15.4 million viewers as people worldwide watch environmental karma delivered in real time. Comments range from prayers for my safety to betting pools on how many pieces Sterling's highway will break into. Personal stakes reach maximum intensity as I realize this isn't just about property or legal justice anymore. Hurricane Helena represents the final exam in a course Grandfather Ezra designed 37 years ago. Pass or fail, the test results will be written in storm surge and scattered across the Gulf of Mexico. Sterling's highway gleams in the pre-hurricane twilight, 4 lanes of concrete arrogance aimed directly at Mother Nature's biggest tantrum in decades. Helena approaches like the judgment of physics itself, ready to teach a masterclass in consequences that will be remembered long after the floodwaters recede. Sometimes revenge comes with 185 miles per hour winds and a storm surge measured in decades. Hurricane Helena, 24 hours to landfall, and the final act of this environmental crime drama begins with winds that sound like the earth screaming. Cordelia makes her last desperate play, filing a motion claiming the federal investigation itself weaponized the hurricane against innocent homeowners. She's actually arguing in court that environmental prosecutors somehow conspired with the National Weather Service to time Helena's arrival for maximum legal impact. The judge's response gets leaked to social media. "Ma'am, this court does not have jurisdiction over meteorology." Sterling's final phone call from the Cayman Islands gets intercepted by federal wiretaps as he tries to hire mercenaries to evacuate his construction equipment. "I'll pay $1 million cash to anyone who can move my bulldozers before the storm hits," he pleads to what turns out to be an FBI informant. The response becomes an instant meme. "Sir, your bulldozers have a date with destiny, and destiny doesn't reschedule for cash." Helena's sustained winds reach 190 miles per hour, with gusts over 220, numbers that put this storm in the same category as the most destructive hurricanes in recorded history. The eye wall tightens to 20 miles across, creating a concentrated drill bit of destruction aimed directly at Sterling's concrete monument to greed. Federal agents evacuate to hardened command centers 60 miles inland, maintaining satellite surveillance on Cordelia and Sterling's abandoned development. Criminal charges are locked and loaded, waiting to be filed the moment Helena finishes delivering nature's verdict on environmental terrorism. The sound becomes indescribable, like standing inside a jet engine mixed with the roar of 1,000 freight trains. Emergency broadcasts repeat the same message every 10 minutes. This is a life-threatening situation. If you are still in the evacuation zone, shelter in place and pray. My engineering calculations prove Sterling's highway will amplify storm surge by 600%. What should be 15 feet of manageable flooding becomes 22 feet of destructive force moving at highway speeds. The concrete channel he built to access luxury homes will deliver liquid destruction with the precision of a guided missile. Sterling's $15 million in construction equipment sits frozen by federal asset seizure orders, positioned perfectly to become hurricane projectiles. Bulldozers that destroyed wetlands about to be destroyed by the wetlands they should have protected. The poetry of justice delivered in twisted metal and scattered concrete. Insurance companies send final notifications via emergency services. All coverage voided for properties in illegally modified flood zones. Policyholders assume unlimited personal liability for hurricane damage caused by unauthorized environmental modifications. Sterling's highway transforms from asset to liability worth negative infinity the moment Helena makes landfall. Margaret River uploads her final financial evidence from an emergency shelter 100 miles inland. Sterling's $47 million debt becomes immediately due upon destruction of collateral by natural disaster. His international lenders don't care about hurricanes. They want their money, and bankruptcy court doesn't accept acts of God as payment. The media circus reaches biblical proportions with 18.6 million viewers watching my hurricane livestream. International news crews describe this as environmental crime meets divine justice, while social media explodes with #Helena of the Highway trending globally alongside official disaster coverage. Cordelia's abandoned crisis management firm releases a statement from their private jet. "We cannot represent clients who argue that federal law enforcement agencies control the weather. Even professional spin doctors have limits, and claiming prosecutors weaponized hurricanes apparently crosses every ethical line in their playbook." Helena's eye becomes visible on satellite imagery, a perfect circle of destruction 30 miles across, churning toward the Texas coast with the inevitability of physics itself. Storm surge models show 25 feet of water moving inland at 90 miles per hour, enough force to relocate houses, cars, and concrete highways to entirely different zip codes. Federal prosecutors coordinate final preparations from bunker-like emergency command centers. Environmental terrorism charges prepared, RICO conspiracy cases locked and loaded, asset forfeiture orders ready for immediate execution. Justice doesn't take hurricane delays. My cabin shudders as Helena's outer winds reach 120 miles per hour, still 18 hours from landfall. Grandfather Ezra's military engineering holds like the fortress it was designed to be, while Sterling's luxury development starts disintegrating under wind loads that exceed every building code by factors of 10. The livestream audience grows to 21.3 million as people worldwide watch environmental karma delivered in real time. Comments pour in from 6 continents, with viewers placing bets on whether Sterling's highway will be found in Louisiana or underwater in the Gulf of Mexico. Personal revelation hits as Helena's roar drowns out human thought. This isn't about legal justice anymore. This is about natural law asserting dominance over human greed. Grandfather Ezra designed a test that only honest men could pass, and Sterling failed spectacularly. Helena approaches like the finger of God, ready to erase Sterling's concrete arrogance and restore the natural order that should never have been disturbed. Storm surge calculations show the highway will be underwater within 6 hours of landfall, reduced from monument to rubble in less time than it takes to watch a movie. Sometimes the best justice comes with winds that rewrite geography and storm surges that reset human hubris to sea level. Hurricane Helena makes landfall at 2:47 a.m. with the fury of a planetary tantrum, and 23.8 million people worldwide watch environmental justice delivered at 195 miles per hour. The first thing to go is Sterling's precious highway sign, Willowbrook Luxury Access Road, opening fall 2024, which gets airborne and disappears into the darkness like a very expensive paper airplane. The live stream captures it perfectly. One moment it's there, the next it's achieving orbit somewhere over Louisiana. Helena's eye wall hits with winds that turn air into a weapon. The sound becomes impossible to describe. Imagine standing inside God's blender while angels scream. My cabin, built by a man who understood that some fights require bunkers, holds like the fortress Grandfather Ezra designed it to be. The storm surge arrives exactly as my engineering calculations predicted. 24 feet of angry ocean moving at 85 miles per hour through Sterling's concrete funnel. His highway doesn't just flood, it becomes a liquid superhighway channeling destruction with the precision of a guided missile aimed directly at his own luxury development. 24 million viewers watch Sterling's $2.8 million model home disappear in real time. One moment it's there with its perfectly manicured lawn and 3-car garage. The next it's marine debris heading toward Arkansas. The live stream chat explodes with comments ranging from "holy shit" to "that's what you get for destroying wetlands." The concrete highway begins disintegrating under forces it was never designed to handle. 4 lanes of environmental arrogance break apart like crackers in a toddler's hands, creating projectiles that demolish everything downstream. Sterling's monument to greed becomes ammunition in nature's artillery barrage. Federal agents document everything from hardened command bunkers, gathering evidence for what prosecutors are calling environmental terrorism proven by natural disaster. The footage shows Sterling's development being systematically erased, while the remaining wetlands absorb massive overflow, protecting neighborhoods to the east, exactly as Grandfather Ezra calculated. Cordelia's mansion, the crown jewel of Sterling's suburban empire, gets hit by channeled storm surge moving at freight train speeds. The house doesn't flood gracefully. It explodes into splinters and designer furniture that joins the floating parade of luxury debris heading toward the Gulf. Her crisis management team's final invoice arrives via email during the hurricane. Services terminated due to act of God and federal prosecution. The engineering vindication becomes undeniable as Helena's surge demonstrates the difference between natural flood control and artificial disaster amplification. Protected wetland areas show 80% less flooding than Sterling's modified zones. Grandfather's cypress groves absorb water like enormous sponges, while Sterling's concrete channels it like a weapon. Helena's eye passes directly overhead at 4:33 a.m., creating an eerie calm filled with the sound of debris settling and water draining. 25 million viewers experience the hurricane's eye through my live stream, a temporary silence that feels like the earth taking a breath before round 2. The second eye wall hits with renewed violence, completing Helena's destruction of Sterling's environmental crimes. His luxury lots become underwater archaeology, his construction equipment scattered across 3 counties, his highway reduced to broken concrete that will take decades to clean up. Federal prosecutors coordinate with disaster response teams, preparing to file charges the moment Helena moves inland. Environmental crime scenes don't get hurricane delays, and the evidence floating in 20 feet of storm surge speaks louder than any witness testimony. International media coverage reaches unprecedented levels as viewers worldwide watch environmental karma delivered in real time. Helena becomes more than a hurricane. It's a morality tale about human greed versus natural law, told with 195 miles per hour winds and storm surge measured in biblical cubits. Sterling's $47 million debt becomes immediately due as international lenders invoke total asset destruction clauses. His offshore accounts, frozen by federal orders, can't cover loans secured against property that now exists only as floating debris somewhere in the Gulf of Mexico. The mic drop moment comes at 6:15 a.m. as Helena moves inland and federal agents emerge from command bunkers with arrest warrants. Rebecca Santos announces live on CNN. Federal prosecutors confirm that Hurricane Helena has provided definitive proof of environmental terrorism charges. Sterling's illegal highway amplified storm damage by 600%, exactly as predicted by federal engineering experts. Dawn breaks over a transformed landscape where Sterling's suburban empire once stood. The hurricane surge recedes, leaving behind a moonscape of scattered concrete, displaced luxury debris, and the undeniable evidence that Mother Nature doesn't negotiate with environmental criminals. My cabin stands intact among the devastation, a monument to Grandfather Ezra's engineering wisdom. The remaining wetlands, battered but unbroken, begin their natural recovery process, while Sterling's concrete highway exists only as scattered rubble and insurance claims that will never be paid. 27 million viewers worldwide witness the final frame of environmental justice: Cordelia Blackstone in federal custody, Sterling's empire underwater, and nature reclaiming what should never have been taken. Hurricane Helena delivers the ultimate verdict that no court could improve upon. Sometimes the best justice comes with Category 5 winds and storm surge that resets human arrogance to sea level. 1 year later, I'm standing in the same spot where Cordelia's highway used to cut through Grandfather's wetlands, except now it's the heart of the Ezra Morrison Federal Wildlife Refuge, 200 acres of restored cypress paradise that Hurricane Helena helped design. Federal Judge Patricia Williams called it the most clear-cut case of environmental terrorism in American legal history when she sentenced Cordelia Blackstone to 18 years in federal prison. Sterling got 25 years plus $127 million in restitution, every penny of his hidden offshore accounts seized by international cooperation agreements. The judge's final words became legendary. "You destroyed natural hurricane protection during hurricane season. That's not just environmental crime, that's attempted murder of an entire community." But the real victory happened outside that courtroom. The insurance settlement forced every major flood insurance company to change their policies nationwide. You can't cancel coverage just because someone else destroys environmental protection in your neighborhood. The Sterling Doctrine now protects homeowners from HOA environmental crimes, and property values in federally protected areas increased 60% as people realized wetlands are better hurricane insurance than any policy you can buy. Margaret River got elected to the County Commissioner's Court on a platform of environmental transparency and corporate accountability. Her first act was establishing the Sterling Financial Crimes Unit, a specialized team that investigates HOA corruption using forensic accounting methods. 36 similar cases have been prosecuted using her playbook. The environmental restoration became a model for post-hurricane recovery nationwide. EPA brought in cypress specialists from Louisiana who planted 800 new trees using seeds collected from Grandfather's Grove before Sterling destroyed it. The restored wetlands absorbed Hurricane Isabel's 12-foot storm surge 2 years later without a single protected home flooding. Federal wildlife biologists call it the most successful disaster-driven restoration in American history. Rebecca Santos founded the Environmental Crimes Legal Defense Fund with $3.2 million in Sterling asset forfeiture money. Her nonprofit has prosecuted 147 similar cases nationwide, establishing federal precedent that destroying natural disaster protection constitutes terrorism under federal law. Law schools now teach the Sterling Standard for environmental crime prosecution. Sterling died in federal prison serving his 25-year sentence. His construction company was permanently banned from any project involving environmental permits. The equipment that survived Hurricane Helena got sold at federal auction, with proceeds funding wetland restoration across the Gulf Coast. His luxury development lots became part of the federal refuge, marked with signs reading, "Protected Wetlands, Hurricane Helena Memorial Area." Cordelia was denied parole 3 times. Federal prosecutors cite her case when training new environmental crime investigators. Her former crisis management firm uses her prosecution as an example of clients they won't represent. Apparently, there are limits to professional spin, and environmental terrorism during natural disasters crosses every ethical line. The Social Good Initiative transformed our community into an environmental education destination. The Ezra Morrison Hurricane Preparedness and Wetland Festival brings 15,000 visitors annually, generating $4.8 million in ecotourism revenue. Local schools use the Restored Refuge for Environmental Science programs, and Texas AANDM established a research station studying natural hurricane protection. The Ezra Morrison Environmental Scholarship provides $750,000 annually for low-income students studying environmental protection. Recipients work summer internships at the refugee, learning how natural systems protect communities better than any human engineering. My nephew started college this fall on a Morrison scholarship, planning to study environmental law. The ripple effects continue spreading. The Hurricane Wetland Protection Act passed Congress unanimously, establishing federal criminal penalties for destroying natural disaster protection. 43 states now require environmental impact assessments before approving any coastal development. HOA boards face mandatory environmental compliance training, and illegal presidents can't make legally binding decisions. 5 years later, the refuge faced its ultimate test when Hurricane Marcus struck as Category 4. The expanded wetlands absorbed 18 feet of storm surge while surrounding communities stayed completely dry. Insurance companies now offer discounts for wetland-protected properties, and property values in protected areas exceed pre-Helena levels by 40%. Yesterday, I got a call from a homeowner in Arizona whose HOA wants to bulldoze protected desert habitat for a golf course. The president's husband owns the landscaping company, and they're claiming emergency water management justifies destroying endangered species habitat. Some people never learn. But we've got a playbook now, and Mother Nature keeps excellent records. Drop a comment with your worst HOA environmental nightmare. You might be fighting federal crimes without knowing it. Hit subscribe because next week I'm breaking down the Arizona desert case where an HOA tried to destroy endangered species habitat and learned why you don't mess with federal wildlife prosecutors during nesting season. Trust me, you won't believe what happened when FBI agents showed up during the community barbecue.